Welcome to What's That Pen, helping you find your next perfect pen. My name is Amanda, and today we are looking at the Karin BrushmarkerPRO set. First, let's talk about the container for this package. It is made out of quite a hard cardboard, and each of your pens has a slot, so a home right where it belongs. And then this outer portion wraps around. There are two magnets set in it so that it clips shut, and you can carry them all just like this within the case. Even if you're to shake it around, nothing moves, nothing falls out, everything is perfectly in order. That's one thing that I think is a real strength of this set, is that, okay, I have been known to actually put this in my purse and take it to Starbucks to do some watercoloring in Starbucks. So I guess it could be called a travel set to go. But unlike many other watercolor markers where you're grabbing one or two and tossing them in your bag, this entire set is compact and ready to go. Sure, it's big because you have 60 different colors in the set, but 60 colors of amazing, beautiful opportunity. Now, one thing that might seem a little bit daunting is the fact that in this box you get 60 different colors, and then there are 3 blender pens, but honestly, I never use these. I either use a paintbrush or a water brush. So I like to consider the number of colors, which is 60 in this set. This set is about $103 on Amazon right now, so while $103 is a ton of money to drop, you are getting 60 colors, which puts it at about $1.71 per pen. And I have to say that often when I get sets that have this many colors, there are at least a few colors that I can never see myself using. Whereas I feel like the color geniuses at Karin made absolutely the right call on every single one of these colors. They are all colors that I use. There are not too many browns. The grays don't blend necessarily quite as well as I would like, but all of these colors are colors that I have used in pieces. I don't know if I have any other set that I can say that about. So this comes in a box of 60 colors, or it comes in a box of 25 colors as your other option. That one runs you about $45 to $55. So in that case, you're looking at about $1.86 per pen instead of $1.71. So it is a slight increase, but if you want to just sort of dip your toes into these markers, that might be a good way to do it. They also now have a metallic set, and they have a neon set out as well. So the ink in here is actually a paint that they have filled this with, and it is a watercolor paint. It has a vivid dye-based ink, non-toxic, so we have all that going. It says nothing about it being acid-free, but I mean, if you want to play around with some watercolors, you want to be able to take those watercolors easily with you on the go, this is a great alternative for that. All right, let's open up a pen and see exactly what we've got inside. So the nib is on the large side, which is okay. It just means remember that you're gonna have to scale up your writing, so fewer letters per page. It does have a nylon brush tip, but it's not felt-based. So typically nylon stands up a little bit better than your felt-based alternatives. For your upstrokes and downstrokes, the transition to this marker is relatively easy, and as long as you are ready to use a larger scale size of writing, these ones can work for you. If you want to do smaller writing, this is not a good option for you. So your thick line is relatively thick, and the thin line is sort of thin, but when you consider the difference or the contrast in these two sizes, there is quite a bit of contrast. You can feel that pressure on the thin line. Here, where it's really thin, there was less pressure that I could feel, whereas up here, that's sort of the size that I think would be the average size of the upstroke. And also having that width there, when you go to use this as a watercolor, that can be a good size zone to be able to fit your paintbrush in there to blend your colors out. If it's too thin, often you end up going off of that line, and then your piece can look a little bit messy. Let's look next at the nib rebound. So pressing one direction, going up and down on the pen, and then we take a look at it, and the pen almost looks like I just pulled it out of the box. There is very little bend to it. So the fact that it pops back right away into its original shape is a serious plus for this. I would say that this is one of the best rebounds that I've seen recently in the pens that I've been testing, so it's nice that we finally found one with good rebound. Remember though, as you're writing, you always do want to be turning your pen a little bit just so it doesn't get pushed in one direction. Having better nib rebound means that the difference between your upstrokes and downstrokes will be nice and crisp, and also that your upstrokes will stay consistent over the length of your piece. They won't get wider and wider as you go along because your nib rebound is not popping back to give you that nice thin upstroke. I would say that these pens have excellent nib rebound. Super easy, but you are going to be writing large. I wish I had extra large on this paper because it is an extra large writing size that you're going to need to be doing. And when I say extra large, I mean, like, I like to write on 12 by 16 size watercolor paper with these markers, and typically that's 2 to 3 short words on a 12 by 16. So keep that in mind, not just when you're using your pens, but also when you're choosing what paper to use. A regular size piece is not going to get you very many letters at all. All right, for the juiciness, I have a feeling I know how this smear test is going to go. Coloring it on there and then smearing. So there definitely is some smear there. It's not as much as I was expecting. There is purple on my finger, and one thing I do want to warn you about is that it's very likely you're going to end up with this all over your hands and all over the side of your hand. I highly suggest when you're using these that you have a separate piece of paper that you can rest your hand on so that you're not activating any of the paint with the oils or the moisture in your hand and making smears all over your work. All right, because it is a watercolor-based marker, the juiciness of it is that it's pretty wet. It's designed to keep some of that wetness. And last but not least, let's look at our ease of transition. This is a really small loop for a pen this large, but I'm gonna try to get them nice and smooth. And you can see what we're always looking for is the C curve on the inside and then the C curve on the outside, and it is pretty smooth. I was rushing, not going quite as slow as maybe I should have, but the transition, the ability to bounce back to a thin upstroke is definitely there, and a lot of that is because of the excellent nib rebound of these pens. One more thing that we have to look at, because they are watercolor pens, is the ability to use it on some watercolor paper. So let's move over to watercolor paper and do a little bit of testing to see how the blend goes. When you are choosing your watercolor pen, you want to make sure that it can blend. You also want to make sure that you can lift the color up off the page. So that means that rather than just having this one solid color that we've got going on here, you want to be able to activate it with some water and blend it down, and blend it in a way that you don't end up with a hard line from where you had your marker and then where you went into just water blending. So what I mean by that is we drew the line to about here with the actual marker, and then after that we've moved on to just blending this color down simply with water. And we want to make sure that we can blend without there being an obvious line in the middle. The other thing you want to be able to do is to lift some of that color. So with a clean paintbrush, with a touch of water on it, to be able to go in and actually pick some of that color up. Because one of the beautiful things about watercolor is having the areas of lightness and the areas of saturation. All right, and then looking at the blend, we want to see how these two colors will blend together. So again, we're going to be activating this paint right here and then pulling it up into the other portion of the A. And now because these are designed to be watercolors, there is quite a bit of pigment flow from one area to the next. And that can be a really nice way to make it look like it was done with your traditional style watercolors. And again, we can get even more blend there. Let's try adding back some of the darker color to force the blend down into this section. See how well we can blend a little bit more out. And right now I'm coloring on wet paper. You might remember that other pens that we've tested don't allow for very much color transmission from the marker onto wet paper, whereas this one does still drop quite a bit of paint from the marker onto the wet paper. And a lot of that has to do with how juicy this is. You can actually see inside your marker the liquid paint that's inside there. And the fact that it comes quite quickly, not too quickly, but it flows quite easily out of the tip, means that you will be able to add paint even onto wet areas of your paper. Doing that can allow for those really nice natural watercolor blends. So here we've been able to bring this orange color all the way up into this previously pink area. We've been able to add onto wet painted area, and let's try blending out a deeper color onto a previously dried painted area, just with a touch of water. The littlest bit of water activates this paint, and then you end up being able to easily blend away those areas where you had added more paint so that you don't have an obvious line in between any spaces where paint was added or water was used. I'm not going to color swatch all of the markers in this box here because I have an entire series of Karin tutorials for you that go through swatching out all of your paint colors so that you know exactly what you have in your collection, and then that also take you on to applying these to create gorgeous foliage, perfectly blended letters, and wreaths. All of that is coming up for you. So make sure that you subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss a single day of the tutorials with the Karin markers. Also, if you're not sure how well you'd be able to use the Karin markers, now I don't consider myself a painter, but these have made painting pieces so much easier for me, and I know that they'll do the same for you. If you're a little bit hesitant, make sure that you watch that series so that you can see just how easy they are to use. And I'm not saying that because they're paying me. I wish they were paying me. They're not. But these are just markers that I've started to use in my everyday practice. I have used them quite a bit. The nibs are still in really good condition, even though I use them regularly on rough watercolor paper. So that means that you can still get your crisp lines. But also, since they are designed to be watercolor, think of them as a way to get watercolor onto your page rather than a pen. If you're thinking of them as a pen that you're just going to use as a writing pen, this might not be the best choice for you. But if you want to use them to create some beautiful and easy watercolor effects, watercolor lettering, then this is probably a good way to go. You can get lots of colors for a relatively cheap price when you consider that each pen is about $1.70. One more test that we want to do is just to see how that blend goes. If we are to put some color down onto the page and even leave it for a minute, how well will we be able to blend it out? Will we still see a line there, or will it naturally activate and then blend down? Let's do a few colors just to really force this test. And even a nice dark color, because sometimes those dark colors can burn their way into the paper and it's hard to get them to activate and blend. So with a little bit of water and a paintbrush, I just dab off that excess water a little bit, activating this paint and then blending it down. You can see that there is no distinct line anymore. That just has all been pulled down, and we can even continue and reactivate this paint here and get it to go further, right to the end of the page. Let's try the orange next. Activating it by adding that water on top and then pulling it down allows us to create a very natural blend. That's part of why we were able to go back into the A and continue adding and even continue activating some of the areas. Like maybe here we think, oh, it's not light enough. Take a bit of water, we can activate it and lift up even more of that color right in the middle of the body of the A there. So now activating the green and then drawing it down. And our final color, the blue, that dark, dark blue, even that can be activated and pulled down to a lighter shade. You can see though, the longer that we leave it, the more likely there is to be a little bit of a line there. So make sure that after you place the color, you're ready to blend it out right away. Our red ended up being quite good. One other thing you can try is always going back and blending over it again to see if you can color that out. Or another trick you can do is to add a little bit more color over that blend line seam and then reblend it all, just to cover it up even more. These are only 4 of the 60 colors, but like I mentioned, we will be doing the full chart in a future lesson. Some of the pros of this set are that the price per pen is actually relatively cheap. They're super easy to write with, mostly because of nib rebound, being able to feel where that upstroke pressure should go and where your downstroke pressure should go. You get really, really easy, smooth transitions, and you're able to create really beautiful watercolor effects. Now, there is a bit of a con in that it is relatively expensive if you're buying the entire set, but if you feel like watercolor is something you want to get into, this is probably a good way to get into that. Because if you look at how much watercolor paints are, they are not cheap, and you can get lots of colors for about $100. The other thing that could be a little bit tricky is if you're a lefty, of course, they don't dry very quickly, so there's a good chance you're going to smear, but even for right-handed, you probably want to have a piece of paper down underneath your hand just to protect your work underneath. The nylon nib does help to keep the nib shape without as much fraying on these pens, and like I said, I've used them a whole bunch on watercolor paper and they still look great. Super sharp, super clean, and there are no frays so far, so fingers crossed. That being said, I am going to remind you that pens are definitely consumable items, so you shouldn't expect them to always stay perfect. Also, if you're using them on rougher surfaces like watercolor paper, that's one of the things you can run into. I think of these not just as pens, but also as watercolor vehicles. They're a way to get that paint onto the page, and often you're going to be using a paintbrush or a water brush in order to go over it quite a few times to get the blend. So that's where a lot of your marking ends up going. It's with a paintbrush and not with this actual pen. All in all, I would say, especially if you want to get into watercolor, this is absolutely a set that I would recommend. So on a scale of yay, okay, no way, or stay away, this is absolutely a yay set. If you have the interest in watercolor, this is a great way to dive in. It's a really nice way to be able to control your paint, control exactly where your color goes, and control the saturation of your color. I would say that this is probably one of my favorite sets of pens. Just throwing that out there. I think it definitely has to be. Remember that there is also going to be an entire series on using these pens, so make sure that you subscribe before you forget so that you can see exactly how to use these for foliage, wreaths, berries, letters, all of those good things, and put them together into a beautiful project. I can't wait to do some more Karin marking with you very soon. Don't worry if you think that the pen reviews are done. They are not. I just know that there's so much more that can happen with these pens. So it's a tangent. We're going on a Karin tangent. There are going to be more pen reviews coming. I still have, I think, 20 different types of pens that I have in my stash that I can't wait to share with you. So until next time, happy lettering.